Hello, this is Kris Nelson from evolveconsciousness.org. I'll be reading the etymological breakdown of family ownership and slavery, published on the 8th of November 2014. Family etymologically means servant, slave. In order to make slaves feel, quote, at home, quote, welcome, quote, loved, and, quote, cared for, the slave master changes their treatment. They also use the mind control device of spells cast through symbolic language magic. The slave is told they are part of the household now, included in the protection, which only means they are protected as property by the master, but the master passes this protection as, quote, care, just as he cares for his own kin and clan. Now they are members of a, quote, household, not equal members, but now they are told they are members. The former overt in-your-face slavery was slowly replaced with indentured servitude slavery and mind control slavery of an even more covert kind. And this ties into getting the slaves to fight amongst themselves based on privileges and rewards that are granted to some slaves and not others. And this is where the house slave comes in. And I have written about this in the predatory dominator mind virus that we live in as our society, our system of living, in that the house slave is content to be a house slave because now they have, instead of being a slave who served others, now they have others serving them. So in their mind, they've gone up the rung of the predator dominator survival system. They're still a slave, but they're treated better. They have more rewards and privileges than the other slaves. So they'll gladly help the master subdue the other slaves because they want to keep their position of privilege. They don't want to go back to simply serving others. They want to be served as well, even though they're still serving others. So this is how our society is all built on slavery, even though we think hierarchy is normal and titles and elevations through titles and position is normal, but it's not. It's a method of slavery. So the former overt in-your-face slavery was slowly replaced with indentured servitude slavery and mind control slavery of an even more covert kind. So then eventually everyone became house slaves. We all get served, but we serve other people. Rather than just serving other people, we all look at how we're all in a codependent system of indentured servitude, so we're all serving each other. So now we're all house slaves. The practice came into being of including the servants more into the house and less treatment of them as non-human animals are normally treated. Later, a word is derived to symbolize this, quote, great and, quote, loving expression from the slave master. The relationship is always a master to a slave, but the appearances change. Comforts and convenience replace harshness. This is also a basic psychological trauma mind control technique. Servitude is associated with the inclusion into the household as a member of the, quote, family, the domicile. And domicile, dominion, that's also in the predatory dominator little post where I explain what dominion, domination, it's all from the same thing. Overt slavery was eventually removed, and the word family is simply as we understand it today in the positive way. So it's just the family and domicile, and we all look at the word family in a positive, and we don't understand the etymological sources I'm looking into. But we are all still slaves in a greater sense, as each of us are subsets of a greater whole. Each family unit is an individual subset of the greater, quote, family of the nation-state, the motherland or father. So we're part of the motherland and fatherland, and we're the children of the motherland and fatherland, so we become members, quote, members that are in the, quote, household of the nation, in the country, where we're, quote, at home, this is our home. We're, quote, welcome, quote, loved, and, quote, cared for by our motherland and fatherland, and that is our family. And so we, quote, serve the motherland and fatherland, right? Isn't that what the whole mind control thing is? It's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So yay nationalism, yay mind control, yay slavery. Let's all be slaves to the state. That's our family. Why? Because you serve, you're a servant for that motherland and fatherland. It doesn't care about you. It's not even an entity. But it's like the slave master who doesn't care about the slaves that it treats unfairly. Well, the people who take up the position in government, the fiction of government, and rule the motherland and fatherland, well, they just look at you as a slave as well. You're just another cog in the machine, a universal constructor to produce for the motherland and fatherland as a unit. You're part of the collective. You're just a slave. You're held in the house. The terms domestic, domain, and dominator are related to family. Here I have a link to the article I was talking about, the predatory dominator system. They relate to a house and things that belong to the house, as in property, master of those things in the house or domain. Family was originally property included in the household. This is the madness that material obsession and ownership tends to lead to without the other knowledge of how it is wrong. So probably this meaning got warped, or when it was developed, it was probably developed within slave times, where even the patriarchal father dominator, the father of multitudes, looked at themselves as ruler over their children. So they were the master, and everyone had to obey the father. You have to obey the fatherland. You have to obey the patriarch. So you're just a slave. You don't have a voice of your own. There's no equality. There's no unanimity in decisions. It's just you obey and do what you're told. And that's what families are. Just look at families. The typical family construct is male dominator decides what happens, and the woman follows and cooks and cleans, and that's the way things were. Things have changed now with the corrupted form of feminism, where yes, it provides empowerment, but then it also divides people from each other, and it has people assuming roles that are the same and provide for more enslavement. Rather than be free to raise your kids, well, now, since both parents work, the state takes over, and then the children become slaves to the state through indoctrination into outcome-based education to become a cog in the machine as a universal constructor unit. It all ties together. Before the family structure was corrupted, and the nationhood structure was corrupted, but eventually through mandatory education and removal, a disintegration of the family unit, even though it wasn't the optimal family unit, it was a bit corrupt, but some people still had morality and made it work and didn't treat their families as slaves. But some people did, and there was abuse and domination, and that's all part of the way the system is created, because it's a predatory dominator system. So it's no wonder that our personal lives also have aspects of predatory domination, because we are a reflection of society, and society is a reflection of us. It's a recursive loop. It's a cycle where when we are born, we are created in the mold of our environment through nurturing, conditioning, and impositions from our parents, which were conditioned from society, and society conditions us. Parents condition us, school conditions us, everything conditions us in the form of what already exists as the normalized acceptability standard, which is what society is as a predatory dominator system. So you become infected with predatory dominator modalities of being, and then you create back into society what society fed you to become. So it just feeds more of the system. I've already talked about this in other audios. Now, in a comment on a thread on capitalism on Facebook, I cleared up some more confusion about economics, now we see where household management of economics ties into all of this as the management of what the master holds in his protective dwelling. So here, some links for the economy, etymology on economy, numismatic, manage, and manual. So economy is oikos. That's the root, which is house, abode, or dwelling, plus nomos. So oikos plus nomos is oikonomos, economy. Nomos is managing, from nemein, manage, and then see numismatic. The control of distribution, division, allotment, sanctioned by custom, law, or common usage. This is what coinage or money was invented for. I do not put economics as the front of my life as the chief most important capital, which is what most people do when they think of capitalism and capital. They put economy, free trade, goods and services as the most important thing. I put truth and morality as my capital. And that's what leads you in life as your most important thing. So when you put economy, money, goods, free trade as the most important thing, well, that's what drives you most as the first and most important thing in your life, is survival and money. And that's low base consciousness. Whereas if your capital is transcendental aspects of being that you can embody and become, such as truth and morality, then that's what will drive you in life, is truth and morality, and not money or economics or free trade or goods and services. So capital is important to understand. So if you look at the words economy, numismatic, manage, and manual, it's about the control of distribution. When you manage something, manual in your hands, you're in control of it. You're controlling distribution. And the division, allotment, sanctioned by custom. Because the numismatics has to do with coinage. So you're dividing things into specific values, and you're allotting, you're sanctioning allotment through a custom, law, or common usage. So you're saying, in the law, in common usage or custom, well, this coinage has this value, and so people are things are distributed in an economy through control of value. Household is from house and hold. So house is connected to hide, since you hide in a shelter to protect yourself. Hence why the family, and you bring the slave into the house, and they had greater protection compared to the field slaves. The house slave had more protection. They had more privileges and rewards. So in the house, you get to hide. It's a shelter to protect yourself. So you're protecting your property. You have dominion over your house, and you have dominion over your property. Ownership. And then it turns into people. People ownership. You own them. You bring them into your house, and you own them. Even when they're on their land as a regular slave, well, you still own them. Hold as a verb is to contain, grasp, and also cherish, which comes from the verb hold, to keep, tend, or watch over, as cattle, and later to have. And then we have hold, noun 1, act of holding, grasp, grip, keeping, custody, guard, watch, protector, guardian. So you see, when you hold something in your hand, you're also, you can use it and abuse it, but it's also you're grasping it in your hand. You have the capacity of, it's keeping, custody, guard, watch, protector, guardian, because you're holding it, and that's why you have cherish, because you're holding it for protection. You're cherishing it, you're keeping it in custody, you're guarding it as a watcher, protector, guardian. Well, that's what you do when you bring things in your house. It's to protect them, in a shelter, to hide them from others so that they don't take them. You're keeping them in custody. Again, when we look at economics, something sanctioned by custom, law, or common usage, you're keeping it in your custody, you're guarding it, watching, protecting as a guardian. So the family is also has that connotation. When your household, whatever you hold in your house, you bring your things into your house, into your family, and then so that's where the servants come into the family, because they're into the household as a part of the family member, and that's where the master keeps watch and protects and guards them. And that's even what they tell all the slaves too, is that, oh, we're protecting you. If you weren't here, you'd have to go fend for yourself in the regular world and have to get food for yourself, so it's better for you to stay here and just work for me, and I feed you and I shelter you, and this is a better deal. That's how they convince slaves to stay. Mind control. Word magic. I watch over you, I protect you, I guard you, I'm keeping custody over you. So yeah, there's all these seemingly benevolent aspects to it, but when you actually look at it, what are you holding in your hand? Well, that's ownership. So when you're guarding something and protecting it, you're in a sense attached to it, and you're taking some sort of, yeah, it's an ownership. You're taking ownership of it, and you're taking it as yours, and you have it, and you're keeping it. So of course there's positive connotations to a protector and guardian, custody and guard, to hold something safe and things like that. But when you look at it because a lot of words have dual aspects. Oh, that's what I'm talking about here in the next paragraph. I'll just read. Hold has dual meanings as other words do, a positive and negative. You can see how the original meaning of enslavement and exploitation of other animal beings got morphed into, quote, caring for them through, quote, animal husbandry. Because you look at hold, to keep, tend, or watch over as cattle. That's what the slaves are. You keep, tend, and watch over them as cattle. But you don't actually care for them, you don't cherish them, because your cattle, you're just using them as property for your benefit. And in your mind, you lie to yourself and you say, well, this is what a lot of carnists do. Oh, well, well, if we weren't caring for them and feeding them, well, they wouldn't even be born, or oh, well, then they wouldn't be born, or they'd have a harsher time living, they wouldn't have such an easy time living. There's all these pathetic excuses people give for validation of slavery. So you can see, hold, you watch over and you guard them as cattle. Keep it. When you're looking at free beings, it's not just holding a cup in your hand or something you're protecting or whatever. When you're talking about physical, when you're talking about consciousness beings that can feel and think, well, then it becomes an act of slavery. Because cattle aren't there for the own cattle's benefit. You're not watching them over just to be a nice person and looking over them. No, you've domesticated them. Domestic, again, dominion. You're dominating them. You're owning them as slaves. Ownership to hold in your hand. And then it's all passed off through this mind control of, oh, well, you're watching over and you're tending and you're keeping them as a shepherd. Oh, a shepherd's just so great. Yes, the master of his flock. Enslaver. So animal husbandry. Oh, husband again. Who's the husband? Oh, it's the man of the house. The predator, dominator, enforcer. So originally, yeah, the man is stronger and he can protect everyone. Keep, guard, custody. You have your household, where the man is the protector of the house and his family in it, and the things in it. So you guard and protect and watch. So yeah, there's a good connotation and there's a bad connotation. A lot of words have dual meanings. And you have to see how they apply in different contexts to see that it's not just all positive or all negative. So animal husbandry. You watch over them as cattle. And animal husbandry, oh, it's nice, it's husbandry. Yeah, well, anyways, we're getting into that now. So, the enslaved animals will be kept, tended for, watched over, and, quote, cared and, quote, loved, but used as property because, quote, to have is ownership. I.e., to hold something is to have it in your hands and control it, be master over it, when you're looking at it in terms of property. And that's what animal husbandry is those animals, non-human animals, are your property. They're not free beings in your mind. You've enslaved them because you are a predator dominator. And that's the way the system works, is a predatory dominator system. So husband is the master of the house. Again, master doesn't need to be a completely negative thing. just a master of the household, and you can have a master and apprentice. So there's one could be wiser and more capable. So in terms of strength and protection, the male is more capable of protecting. So husband is the master of the house, householder, holder, hold, possession. He's the one most responsible for the protection. Now, to hold other beings under your control, to be master over it, or them, is not right. You can hold a thought and be master over it, and you can hold other material things and be master over it. But not holding other beings, other free beings, and be master over them. Then it becomes an immoral, predatory dominator modality of living. Hold has dual meanings as other words do, a positive and a negative. You can see how the original meaning of enslavement and exploitation of other animal beings got morphed into caring for them through, quote, animal husbandry. Yeah, quote, caring and, quote, animal husbandry. But you can see how it was originally as cattle, to hold and protect and watch over them as cattle, and it's not for the cattle's benefit, it's not for the animal's benefit, it's for your benefit, because you're going to murder them and use them as property for your own benefit. It's not a reciprocal relationship. Oh, well, I get to feed them, and they just sacrifice their lives for me. Yeah, keep lying to yourself, you stupid shithead morons. And you are a shithead moron, because you just lie to yourself over and over and over. Yeah, that's what the slaves did. They were cared for, and everything was okay, because the master cared for them. So the master was allowed to fleece the slaves of their labor, just like we fleeced the other animals. It's their labor, it's their property, it's their life. But who fucking cares? I'm a fucking predator, dominator, human piece of shit, and I'm going to dominate everything I can because I convince myself and I lie to myself with bullshit that I can do whatever I want and enslave anything. As long as it's not my family. And then later we evolve and say, well, as long as it's not my clan. And then later we evolve and say, well, as long as it's not my race. And then later it's, well, as long as it's not humans. And we still have to get to the point where, well, as long as it's not beings that can think, feel, and walk on their own and do things on their own and, live free lives. We haven't reached that point of all animals. It's still selfish human animal. Before that it was just selfish racial human animal. And then before that it was selfish clan or family animal. And the worst one is just selfish me animal. It's all about me. And then the meanness expands to, well, me and my family. Then me and my clan. Me and my race. Oh, me and others like me, other humans. But we still haven't reached the part of, oh, well, there's other animals that are not humans, that have their own lives of their own property, their own will, and you don't have a right to dominate them as slaves. And you cannot use them as property. Slavery is the same everywhere. It works on all animals. Animals are the only ones that can be enslaved. You can't enslave minerals, rocks, or plants. Okay? The enslaved animals we kept, tended for, watched over, quote, cared and, quote, loved, but used as property because to have is ownership. I.e., to hold something is to have it in your hands, control it, be master over it. Husband is the master of the house. Sorry, I just realized that I copied something twice. Okay, so I just deleted the part that wasn't required, and so apologies for repeating things here. We can have things in our grasp legitimately that do not violate natural moral law, or we can go ego delusion of, quote, God and invent any rules we want for conduct. The roots of these words indicate a strong source in slavery. As you can see how originally these words were invented in slave times, which is why the family has a slave connotation, because you just bring in slaves to your family and then they're your family members and then you're under your protection. It's all related. That's why I'm pretty sure the word was invented during slave times and not during a better time where there was no slavery. Slavery's been around for a long time, because humans have been degenerate idiots for a long time. Possibly many thousands of years ago, there was a better civilization that eventually self-destructed. But we don't have much proof of that. Just, some stories and some accounts from history. Probably true, but can't really know. I believe there was another civilization. If you look at Michael Cremo's work on forbidden archaeology and the cover-ups of certain geostrata and how bodies were found at certain stratigraphic layers that could only be accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years and millions of years, and you have bones that are Homo sapien, maybe Homo sapien sapien, I'm not sure, but there are human bones found in geological strata that are supposed to be much older than the current theory of how long man has been on the planet. So that's some interesting research. I'll continue with the article. Owning something is to be master of it, to possess it, to have it, grasp it, hold it. Property, in terms of ownership, is a later derivation from the concept of a thing having things in it. Properties, attributes, qualities, etc. One's own. So you have a human, me, and I have properties, characteristics, attributes, qualities, and aspects within me. It's one's own. It's my own. I have a property of intelligence or reasoning, you could say, or more physical. I have cells in my body. I have DNA, and they're attributes that part of the physical body. That's where the original property ownership comes from. Things innately within you that you have. So an apple has the property and attribute of red or green. There's things that are innately. This is just how we've learned to identify things and aspects of being in reality. You can look at metaphysics and Aristotle for that. So ownership, human property, is the same as the thing in your hands. Ownership of human property is the thing in your hands, the possession, the thing possessed. Everything you control in your hands becomes your slave. You are master of it. So when you take something in your hand, it can have a positive and negative connotation to hold. You can guard it and protect it. You can hold someone in your hand. You can cherish them, care for them. But this seems to be, it was either a first meaning that got corrupted into the domination and slavery aspect of family and holding, or those were the original ones as the words were invented, and then they got altered to mean positive things in order to cover up their negative connotation. You can look at it either way, but either way they have the dual aspects of understanding. So ownership originally is not a negative. You're a master and possessor over things within you because they're innately there. You hold them all the time. They're inherently protected as long as you exist. My spin, my eye color is going to be there, green as long as I exist. So I'm an ownership over the color of my eyes. You can look at it in that way. The property of color, well, I own it, and other people may own it and they may not. Maybe they'll have blue or brown or whatever. It's just a color. So it's part of the property of what is owned in that thing. You possess it. In this metaphysical sense. Hold is also related to house in the sense of a place of refuge, to hide, be protected. Again, the positive meaning, but it came from the negative, or I'm saying, like I said just before, or it's the opposite, where it came from the positive and then got altered into the negative, so you still have the positive connotations, or it was created as a negative and then it became positive in order to convince people that the negative was a positive, which is what we have a lot in our society and system of living, is good as bad and falsity as truth. And people can't discern reality properly. So that's why I do think it was probably a negative first, and then used as a mind control altering as a positive. But it could be the opposite, like I said. Could have been a positive, then became a negative, and then we still have both meanings. Holding in your hands, holding in your protection as a piece of property. But yeah, I'd just like to say that I didn't look at the negative again, so it might be in the etymology where it proves that it came from a negative. So I'm pretty sure it comes from a negative, or else I wouldn't have said that. So I'm pretty sure if you look at the etymology, you'll see that the original roots come from a negative meaning and not a positive one. Maybe. Holding in your hands, holding in your protection as a piece of property that you own, hence the cattle from above. There was the to hold, to keep, tend, watch over as cattle. So hence the cattle to have as the origin of the verb hold. Cognates of hold are to tend, herd, going back to Proto-Indo-European kel, which also relates to the origin of cut, divide, and scales balance, ladder through scale and kel. So you can see how this relates to a positive aspect of scales, balance, dividing and cutting, collecting. That's where logos is, counting, reasoning, thinking, rationality, ratio, proportion. That all has to do with cutting and dividing, scales, balance as well. But, cutting isn't always a positive. What if you cut someone's throat? What if you divide someone's body in half? Well, there you go. There's negative aspects to divide. It's everything in the universe is divided, or else it would all be one thing. There's a multiplicity, diversity, and variability in the universe because things are divided. If it was all one, you'd have nothing but one. You would not know anything, because knowing comes from knowledge, siere, which is a division aspect. It comes from dividing, cutting. So if you cut or divide something, kel, it requires a driving force, kel. To cut or divide is S in parentheses and then kel. It requires a driving force, which is kel, which doesn't have the S. When you herd or tend, there is a driving force to control them, to hold them under your dominion of domination. Because to cut and divide, you need a force to do that. That's why I'm saying requires a driving force of kel, which is the origin of cut and divide. So in order to cut or divide something, you need a driving force. So when you herd or tend, there's a driving force to control them. You can look at it as to hold them under your dominion or domination. So you can look at it maybe as the driving force is your cutting and dividing them into a herd to tend them apart from the other free animals. So you're cutting them apart. You're dividing them from their free normal life into domination, under your dominion and control. Cognates of hold, the verb, in other language relate to quick and goad. Why the drive and goading? Because it relates to drive, quick, and goad. It is about control, slavery, what you think you hold dominion over, at least in your mind. Anything you take grasp of, hold, you dominate. From animals we take and control and dominate to do with as we please. Man adopted this to dominate any beings they could through power of their hands, including women. And this is just an illogical derivation of where does the harm first progress. Do you harm your parents, your siblings first, or do you harm those least like you? So when you tie in survival, well, you're going to harm other animals first before you harm human animals. So through that first act of control and domination and evil and immorality, then you can progress it through, well, the animals act like us and and there's certain characteristics. Then you're less like me and you're more like an animal. That's where the devaluation of other humans, because it starts with a devaluation of animals as property and things to do with as we wish. And then that progresses to other aspects of other animals which are more like our specific being, ourselves, the individual. So the farthest one would be, other races because they're less like us, or women because they're less like us. So first is like you have men and women. So then the next one you dominate is women. And then you have race, and you have outside of your clan and tribe, the community. Well, that's us, and then there's them. And there's men, and there's women. And there's humans, and there's animals. So it's all different aspects of in-group versus out-group. And that's what racism comes from. The race, you could enslave other races and not your own race. And you can enslave women, but not men. You can enslave animals, but not humans. It's all in us versus them. The police is the same thing. They view the men in blue, they got their own family unit, one of us, and then everyone else is one of them. Because if you murder a human, well, it's just murdering a human. But if you murder a police or kill a police, well, then they go crazy. And then they go on a big manhunt because it's an us versus them. They identify with themselves as a group, as a unit, more than they identify with the rest of humanity. They view themselves as exclusive and privileged and of deserving more justice than regular people. So again, men deserved more than women. Whites deserved more than blacks. You had humans deserve more than non-humans. So it's all us versus them. It's all psychological. There's just various levels of the in-group versus out-group identification. See, it's all based on identification and attachment. So I've gone into this in previous audios, in the one I did yesterday on unity and morality, I think, and previous work. Because we have identification with ourselves, and then others close to us, our immediate family, and then our tribe, our clan, our community, our nation, our race, all of humanity, things like that. There's different layers of us versus them and in-group versus out-group identification. So the point of detachment and de-identification is to expand your identification to all beings, all living beings that have a free will and are capable of living their own lives. So you don't exclude one because you recognize the in-group, out-group is just a failure to properly identify things in themselves as being in themselves free will and deserving of the same rights as you. So you need to understand more of reality. When you're in a survival dominator mode, well, it starts from your selfishness of you, and then you probably, if you're more caring, then you expand to your family, and then that's all you care about is your family. And everyone else, well, everyone's out for themselves. And then beyond that, you have the local community, the tribe or clan, and then there's still the us versus them. So it's all in-group, out-group, psychologically, based on attachment and identification, association, valuation. And when you detach, you dissociate, you de-identify with those like you, the animals, then you devalue them and you can do anything. You devalue others less like you, other races and other women. It's all tied to the same thing. In the first devaluation, the first in-group, out-group validation for justifying actions was on other animals because they're the least like us out of all humans. All humans are more like us than animals, so logically it starts with animals. And I don't care if you believe in aliens in a story and you want to believe they taught us how to be evil. Well, where did they learn evil? So what, you have an infinite recursive loop of aliens teaching aliens, teaching aliens, teaching aliens forever and ever into infinity? Because there was no original source person, there was no original source intelligent being that learned how to be evil on their own, that learned to devalue and de-identify for survival or whatever justification, and then they perpetuated that in more diseased and disconnected mindsets. So maybe it was aliens that taught us this on Earth. It doesn't matter. At some point, logically, there is an original source of someone devaluing others, and it didn't start from someone else indoctrinating them into slavery. They came up with it on their own. So even if there was no aliens, we would have come up with it on our own probably. I think that's more probable. The alien thing is possible too, but That's a possibility. I can just go with logic and trace back in time in understanding psychology, and I can go, oh, well, that's where it happens, is in-group, out-group. It's all based on identification. It's psychological. So you can say, and it's possible the aliens taught us. Can you prove it? No. So it's just a belief. It's a possibility. But it's not proven. Anyways, to continue. That's a long enough rant. War and conquest leads to murder, pillage, and rape. All theft of property, from life to material to sexual property of the body. Whatever the delusional, calcified ego pretending to be, quote, God, in psychopathic predator domination can take hold of and manipulate, they view as theirs. Anyone subjectively weaker than them in some way, such as physically, is open for their domination. So women were weaker, children are weaker, animals are weaker. It's all in this aspect of us versus them. There's also the aspect of might makes right. And this is a very low base survival consciousness of you do whatever you want because you can get away with it because you have the power. So you could do whatever. If you can get away with it, you are more powerful than women, more powerful than children, more powerful than animals. But again, you have the identification, so where does that start? Well, it starts on the animals, and it's tied to survival. If you didn't have something to eat, well, you weren't going to eat your family. You were going to look for another animal, and you kill it and eat it. Or whatever. Anyways, with logic, you can find out a lot of what started first, because it just makes more sense. They didn't start cannibalizing their children. No. They'd go get other animal children and eat them first. It starts with those least like you in the devaluation process, and then progresses. Children all over the world are sold into horrors. They are helpless like the other non-human animals we dominate and exploit. Psychopathy in behavior towards humans or non-humans is rooted in the same underlying disunity and disharmony with truth and morality, but they differ in degrees. What is the house hiding and protecting? So we've been talking about, the good aspect, but also the negative aspect of protecting, guarding, watching. So it is hiding and protecting the person themselves, but also protecting those things the master holds on to, all his property and possessions. So they protect themselves, but also everything in the house, because the house holds things, right? It's a household. It's a domain of dominion. It holds things in the house. So it holds his property and possessions. That's why you can see the origin of family. Family, slave, servant. Yeah, well, the slave servant, you were master over it. You held control over it. It was your property and your possession. We can be legitimate masters of things, but never legitimate masters of excessive ownership of things, such as, owning hundreds of acres of land. Well, who the hell gave you that right? No wonder we're all slaves who have to pay for survival, because everyone owns land. Well, who decided you could own millions of acres and all this land, and that you're this monarch and you're this rich person, and everything has been gotten through theft. All land has been gotten through theft. Of this predator-dominator mindset of, I'm going to take it because I can, because I got the power, because I can pay an army of soldiers to defend this land, and I'm just going to keep ownership over it. And they're going to do what I say because I pay them and I feed them, just like a slave. Slave's going to do what I tell them because I feed them and I provide them the shelter, and they're going to do the work for me. Well, that's what an army is. That's what everyone in society does. But we have these guys that, we're all serving each other. Yeah, that's it. We're all serving each other. But it's still under a motherland and a fatherland and government and authority and enslavement. We could serve each other in freedom and help each other, and that would be the proper way. But right now it's corrupted, but we think it's good. Again, falsity as truth and evil as good. We think this is good, the way we live, and everything's normal and great. But we don't see how we're still slaves to authority and delusional beliefs and concepts. So we can be legitimate masters of things, but never legitimate masters of excessive ownership of things, hoarding and all that stuff, and just collecting money to collect money so other people don't have money, and then it creates a disparity. Now you're wealthy and other people have to be your slave, and you don't have to do anything, because with wealth comes time, and then you're free. So that's why wealth is associated with time and freedom, because when you get wealth and you're exploiting, things aren't fair, well then you get more than other people. Okay, it's true, you might be working more, so then it wouldn't be unfair. But the current way of abstract operations that humans engage in, such as the abstraction of money, well, this creates a great divide, a divergence between those who can manipulate the abstraction of money and those who don't, and toil and work for their living, as everyone should. But with the abstraction of money, then you get this whole manipulation game, and then there's a disparity in wealth, and some people have extreme wealth and some people have none, so they don't have freedom in time. They can't learn, they can't educate themselves. Then the wealthy, well, they don't spend their time educating themselves and learning about morality and truth. They just buy mansions and go on trips, and it's all pleasure trap. The self-actualization isn't real self-actualization in truth and morality. It's a self-actualization in selfishness and in attaining whatever you want. You actualize whatever you want. So it's not real self-actualization of the true self, which is the higher self and the higher will. We can be legitimate masters of things, but never legitimate masters of excessive ownership of things, nor the ownership of other sentient, animate beings that have every right to life and freedom we do. They are beings in their own right, not our slaves. Slavery is wrong across the board in all forms. Holding things can be a positive or negative. We need to be aligned with the principles most important capital. We need to be aligned with we need to be aligned with the principle most important capital of truth and morality to be able to determine valid ownership and property. Even the positive aspect of cherish, you can see how ownership and property can lead to the cherishing of material wealth. People get attached to their material property and hold it dear to them, and they protect it. They fight for dear life for their property. I see a very strong connection on all of these words with a common modality of living, that is to say, slavery. The induction of universal, quote, control over reality from particulars was unverified through deduction. So, control over reality. I get to control the rock, control this, control that. So you get to control things around you, but you're not allowed to control free will things. They have their own wills. So it went unverified. So we said, oh, look, I can control the rock. I have strength. I have the power. Might makes right. Control over reality. I can control a woman. I can beat her. I can control the kid. Do whatever I want because I have might, and might makes right. So they only have the induction aspect of, oh, look what I have. I have control over reality. I have power. Well, that means I can do whatever I want. Well, you didn't deduce it. You didn't apply morality. You didn't apply greater logic to see if this was really a verified concept, and you would know it was wrong. So people don't look at. People don't do that. So people looked at their hands and what they could control and be master of, understanding the concept of control through their hands. Control the rock, control wood, control the plant, whatever. This legitimacy of control through the hands was overgeneralized. So they took this little aspect of the particulars and they inducted it as a universal control over reality. They try to control all of reality. And we try to be masters of everything. Master of nature, control everybody. We're all in, it's a psychopathic external control. Why? Because they take little bits of data and they don't think things through. They're ignorant of reality, and it creates confusion, and then they are in external control. This legitimacy of control through the hands was overgeneralized. The universal concept of manipulation and control of reality through the hands was perverted beyond its correct understanding. The limits, see the law. In reality, there are limits and boundaries. and one of the laws created for free will agents that have expressive capacities of consciousness is natural moral law. Once you're able to understand and grasp that law, it's not an automatic law where you're walking and you're not floating like gravity keeps you on the ground through aspects of law related to mass and speed. It generates gravity. Because if you have no mass, well, there's no gravity. Objects with mass create an attraction and things gravitate towards them. Planets have mass, suns have mass, that's where gravity comes from. At least it's theorized that it's, anyways, in the books I've read, that it comes from mass. That's the most logical thing. Even though we don't know what gravity is exactly, it's a force. How does it work? It relates to mass and speed. The more speed, the more the gravity is impacted on the mass. I'm pretty sure. Like if you were going really fast, the g-force, you go too fast, well, the g-force increases and you have like 6 Gs in spaceships or whatever, 8 Gs, because you're going fast, and the speed based on the mass creates a gravitational force of pressure. Anyways, I'm getting off into side tangent crap there. So the legitimacy of control through the hands was overgeneralized. The universal concept of manipulation and control of reality through the hands was perverted beyond its correct understanding. Man did not understand his rightful limits, and here we are today still not getting it. So the limits, the boundaries, the law, natural law, is a law we can discover and live by because it's based on free will and care and compassion, and it is based on oneness, because if you're selfish and you're only concerned with yourself and identification and valuation, then you're not living in morality. It's about expanding our circle of compassion, our care, our heart center, our identification and association with others. So we increase our capacity to recognize other free will beings that have the rights to live free from our harm. And we recognize morality. And that would be a law of behavior for free will agents capable of behavior. And it's a law that needs to be adhered to by those capable of understanding it, because the free will capacity and consciousness manifestations capacity through the physiological body vehicle allow consciousness to be capable of understanding reality to that depth. So the morality, you could say, oh, well, we invented it ourselves. Well, it actually comes from understanding our interconnectivity and oneness as free will agents of expressions of consciousness, albeit at different levels. Lower orders can't think as much as higher orders, and they can't do as much, they can't create as much as higher orders, but they are still an animal, they still have free will, they still have mobility, they still have interactivity. Alright, I guess I'll end it there. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for your time and attention. Have a nice day. Take care. Peace.